Right, welcome to the information session of the Waipuna Halswell-Hornby-Riccarton Community Board. And first up, we've got apologies. Any apologies? None. We've got Helen on Zoom. Debbie, oh, I didn't know Debbie was going to be on Zoom. And we have Tyler, right? And then everybody else is here. Oh, no apologies then. Right, first up, we've got Amy's Awatea and Springs intersection upgrades, engagement feedback. Welcome, you've got 30 minutes. Can Helen and Diane?
Someone's on the phone.
Someone's on
the phone.
Helen.
Hello.
Yes.
Yes, Helen, we need you muted while the presentation is going on. If you can please mute your mic. Thank you.
No.
Okay, thank you. We last came to see you in February of this year to give you the feedback on the options for the intersection improvements. But we also discussed at that stage about doing some engagement with the community and asking them what they felt that were the issues around these intersections. You agreed to that, and so we went back out and did some engagement. We had over 400 responses, which was amazing.
Wow.
Crystal has collated all those results, and she's going to go through those before we talk about what are the next steps. What would you like us to do next? So I'll hand over to Crystal.
Cool, thank you. If you can put through the next slide, or unless I can control it. Okay, so yeah, as Katie said, we went out and did some engagement with the community. We used a wide range of tactics to try and reach the community here, including doing a pop-up stand at the Masateki Hornby Centre, which is the first time we could have done that for a project like this. We dropped flyers to properties around the intersection, and then obviously reaching out to the key stakeholders, so our transport stakeholders, but also the local stakeholders, so like the school and people on the street. Next slide. So yeah, as Katie said, we got 400 survey responses, which is pretty cool. Up there, you can also see that we've got 1,700 page views, which is also great. We do get quite a lot of people going and having a look at projects and maybe following them, but not necessarily providing feedback.
Same amount from
in terms of online versus paper, we actually got a huge number of our survey responses online, so 394 online, and then we had 6 paper. And of those people who gave us paper forms, actually 5 of them had email addresses that they wanted to be kept in the loop on. So only one person who sort of we probably wouldn't have been able to access using online channels. And then I thought this would just be quite cool for the board to see that graph there, the referral types, just shows you where we're getting traffic to the webpage. And as you can see, a massive chunk of it for this one was social media. Which is great news because it means that the community is quite well connected, and those local community Facebook pages that we're posting in is getting us a lot of traffic. In terms of who we heard from, I don't think it's a surprise to anyone that it was 90% car drivers. We also had 4% of people who selected other, so the people who used a range of methods equally or something different. 3% bike users, 2% walkers, and then 1% bus. In terms of where people live, really great news is that we heard predominantly from people who actually live in the area. So if you add up the Hornby Halswell-Riccarton area, then it's about 76% of the survey responses. So that's awesome. That's yeah, a great chunk of those. Yeah. Right, let's see if this works now.
Pretty many targeted, isn't it? Many from Selwyn.
So we did get the 7 survey results on there from outside of Christchurch.
Yep.
I think off the top of my head there was about 4 from Selwyn, 1 from Waimak, And then there were a couple of the really random outliers that were from quite a lot further afield. So we asked the question about how safe people felt using these intersections currently. And the reason we did this was to try and see if we could ascertain whether one intersection was perceived to be safer than the other. As you can see from the results, they're pretty much exactly the same. Respondents felt that both of them were relatively unsafe when they were using them. There's a good majority there. I will apologise. The next few slides are a little bit wordy, and it's just sort of the nature of it when you're doing thematic analysis like this. But I've gone and broken down the survey responses into key themes. What I will do is I'll share all the individual comments with the board after the session. Because this is early feedback, so we haven't treated it like we normally do with formal submissions. So they don't have names attached to them, but they do have the suburb. So that should be some good information when you're reading through them. So this is about the Amy Springs intersection in isolation. Obviously the top theme there, so 165 people told us that it felt difficult or risky to turn right out of Amy's Road onto Springs Road. Then the next highest one was that visibility was a concern. In particular, and this is really interesting for this one, 113 people said visibility or the dip that's at Amy's Road causes issues when pulling out. In terms of feedback on projects, this is pretty significant. Over 100 people have suggested that this is an issue. So that was a really good find for us. And then I'll just read through the rest of them there. So the amount of traffic or congestion was perceived to be an issue. The wait time there is causing risky driver behaviour. So there was a lot of comments there around how the intersection itself is not necessarily unsafe, but the congestion and the behaviour causes it to be unsafe. The traffic stacking into the median. So if you look at the little median island that's on Springs Road between those two intersections, it's quite short. And there was quite a lot of commentary from people who said they'd turn left out of Amy's into Springs and sort of immediately feel that they had to get into that median island so that they could get in the queue to turn right onto Aotearoa. And of course, people going the other way are doing the same thing. So they definitely felt like there was some commentary around how unsafe that was and how messy it could be at times. We got some comments there, 27 comments around pedestrian safety and how they didn't feel like there were safe places to cross. 25 comments around how it was dangerous or they'd witnessed a near miss or an accident. 24 people told us that they currently avoid the intersection or that they use a safer option. So that's another interesting point when we're thinking about doing improvements is that, if we do improve the intersection, it's likely to draw more people to it. Unsafe cycling or unsafe for cyclists was 23 people have made comments about that one for this intersection. Speed 18, and then also we had 7 people tell us that they didn't believe there was a problem at this intersection.
Yeah.
Further 10 o'clock in the morning.
So this is a photo that was given to us from our survey respondents, and this shows that that dip that I'm sure you're probably quite aware of. You can see that the cars on the left-hand side are sitting quite a lot lower than the cars on the right-hand side. And obviously with, the car on the right-hand side being a taller vehicle, it does make it quite difficult to actually see. So this is Amy's Road looking onto the Springs intersection. So the areas on the right-hand side there.
Oh, Spring Park, yep, gotcha.
So moving on to the Aotearoa intersection, obviously that same theme again, that it's difficult or risky to turn right out of Aotearoa. Pretty much the same numbers there. But we have less numbers in terms of the rest of the themes. So our next lowest is 76, whereas the one on Amy's was 113. So much more of a common bit there. Again, very, very similar themes here. So I probably won't go through them all because we've just sort of talked about them on the last slide, but similar across the board there. I'll see if we can play this video. So this was submitted to us by one of the survey respondents, and it shows a near miss at this intersection. I thought it would be good to share with everyone just because it resonated quite a lot with what survey respondents were saying was the issue. I'm not sure if it's gonna.
I couldn't get it to play.
Okay, all right.
Sorry.
We'll share it afterwards. Have a look. It is in the survey responses as well. It essentially just shows someone coming trying to turn right out of Awatere, and there being a near miss with straight through traffic on Springs Road. So then in terms of concerns across both, so we saw on each of the intersections, someone said speed at this intersection or speed at that intersection. There was also an additional 9 people that said, speed was a problem across both. And then in addition to our 7 at Amy's, and I think it was 5 at Awatere, another 9 people said that neither of them are a problem. But it is a small number when you look at the overall survey respondents. The people who said that there was no problem and we should leave it alone, most of them were attributing it to, costs and money being spent on other things. So then we move on to suggestions or solutions across both intersections. Obviously, there's quite a perception there from everyone that traffic lights are needed. So that was the highest theme that came through here. Following that, we had 40 people say that the right-hand turns just need to be easier or safer. Not necessarily any suggestions on how to do that, but that's cool. 33 people said that they'd like to see better traffic flow or less congestion. Same amount again saying that it needed to be safer. And then we sort of go down into the lower themes there, but there are a number of sort of interesting points that people made. Some of them are quite simple things. So there's some suggestions there around moving the bus stops near the intersection and how they can cause some confusion. The one on Springs Road appears to be quite close to that Amy's Road intersection, and that can make that moving into that median quite difficult. There was also some suggestions a little bit left field around what would happen if we closed one or both of those right-hand turns. There were some suggestions around putting in some extra no stopping restrictions around the intersections, and then some around whether roundabouts might be a solution if traffic lights are too expensive. And again, this is just the themes across just one of the intersections. So there were just a small number of people who said, don't put traffic lights at Amy's, but do put them at Awatere. Or vice versa, but a small number of people. Most people said put traffic lights at both. That's probably the end of the engagement feedback. I'll hand it back to Katie to probably finish up, and then we'll do questions. But happy to take questions on engagement stuff as well when we come back to it.
Okay, so this slide was from the previous presentation, and basically set out what budget we've got in this project. So we've got money left still for investigation, and then there's 1.3 million for constructing a solution. But the options we came back to the last time are well out of this budget range. So really what I suppose the next step is that we want to be looking at is some advice from the board as to what you would like us to look at to progress. So so as Crystal said, that generally the community thinks that we need traffic lights at either one or both of these intersections, and that something like that would happen. But there may be other options that we could investigate in the meantime, and I want to know whether we want us to look at some of them or all of them or whatever. So we've already mentioned the fixing the dip in the height difference to help the left-hand turn section from Amy's Road in onto Springs. And there's also been some discussion about extending the no stopping lines on Amy's Road. That could have other implications, because if you get the 2 lanes of traffic going up there, it could have implications for cyclists. But did you want to add?
I guess I've looked into that further with Licky, who is the traffic modeller, and also Wendy, who's the design traffic engineer. Although on the surface it sounds like an option which is cheap and going to be effective, we believe that the benefits from removing the parking on left-hand side, if they were to be removed, it's probably another 3 or 4 car lengths, but they're minor at best. And they're minor at best because the other constraints at the intersection are so strong at the moment in terms of capacity. Also, it's a reflection that there's issues even when there aren't cars parked there. So there's not cars parked on the side there all the time. So so that was one of the things we did want to stress, is that it's not going to solve things. It may help them, but it's minor at best. There was one issue that we haven't looked into further around the formation of two queues and what that does if people are on bikes or whatever. But yeah, that would be some more work into it. But yeah, really difficult.
So we could also look at doing some traffic modelling to see what would happen if we actually stopped the right-hand turns out of both Amy's and Awatea onto Springs Road. That will have an impact on the wider network, because obviously people will then definitely have to find another route. It sounds like from some of the feedback we've already had that a lot of people do that anyway. It's too stressful for them to turn out, so they'll go other ways.
There's also some limitations with I'm thinking about Horsell Road and Larson's Road. So right turn sign, without being physically backed up, has pretty mixed results. It's also quite a blunt tool. So a right-hand turn out of both those roads is actually possible at certain times of the day and night when the conditions are right. Majority of the time it's really difficult, but so that's the other downside, I guess, to putting in a prohibition. Compliance, and also is it credible for the whole day?
Yeah, I mean, we're having to do a petition because it's not working.
Yeah, so I mentioned that. It's another one which, yeah, on the surface seems like really positive. I think anecdotally people are doing just that and avoiding it. And I think Leakey mentioned to me that, for instance, at Amy's Springs, 90% or so are turning left, and there's only 10% trying to turn right.
Because people don't.
Something about, is that right?
Not far away.
And in terms of the survey feedback as well, there was definitely a number of people who talked about how they would do the left and right onto Awatea to actually get back round and turn left back onto Springs again at some other point. So there's definitely a little bit of, I guess you could call it rat running to try and avoid that right-hand turn there.
And with that comes U-turning as well, which is what happens on Horsell Road, as Councillor Moore will know. So people obey the left turn, and not the right turn back, and then they U-turn as soon as they can, which creates another issue at times. So yeah, sorry, cut in there.
It's just like Riccarton Road, Island Road.
No, it's still not working. So I'll just leave it then.
Oh, it's working.
Yeah, but
You have to go right down to Boston Ave to get back on Davies Road, wouldn't you? Yes. Yeah.
Okay. So that's another option that we could look at. There's also, we could look at whether or not we modelled whether we can get roundabouts there. They'd have to be fairly small roundabouts because of the amount of space constraints there are there, and whether or not they would work, because Springs Road is minor arterial. Yeah, and so there's certain requirements there. We could also look at the traffic light options to do a minimum, because what we were originally looking at was, the best option of how those lights would work, but it would mean that you could do a smaller version so you don't get the left-hand lanes, but then that could have an impact on backing up traffic, etc. So we could then provide you with costs for the options that you ask us to investigate further. And really, where you'd like us to take this for the next step.
Are you open for questions now?
Yeah, I think that's
that's the end of it.
that was the end of it. Yes, it was.
Okay. So I've got Andre, Hank, Mark, Debbie, then Sarah. Right. Andre, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I think it's in terms of the questions about which intersection people might think is more dangerous. I guess the way the questions were answered necessarily say, hey, one's more dangerous than the other. It was just either on individually, right? But yeah, I mean, my view is the same as it was some time ago. We should be going out looking for one option that is traffic lights at both, or or we're not. I can't see anything else working. And even though we've got that traffic modelling showing that it might make more sense for traffic flow to just do the Awatea traffic lights, there's no physical way we'll be able to explain to the public on why that was a better thing to do, when we know that most people are, are concerned about the Amy's one.
Yep.
So yeah, for me, it's doing it all properly, or it's sort of not. But I think the options that should probably be ruled out and not have too much more time spent on them is those things like 3Bs for raised intersections and that kind of thing.
Yeah.
I think we should be sort of pretty clear on what we're advocating for here, and to be extracting DCs accordingly where we can. Ideally, you'd have a toll coming from Selwyn to help pay for this. Yeah. But yeah, there we go. I just can't see anything else ever working and getting support from the public. Not having those unintended consequences. Yeah, and I honestly can't see anything else working.
All good?
Hank?
Hank.
Yep. Two things. One is small roundabouts are a pain for big trucks, and they just, to me, they're just a nuisance. Yeah, big trucks scuff their tires. They damage up pretty quickly.
There's a bus depot down.
And the buses would struggle with small. I mean, I know it's technically possible for them to turn around, but I've seen a number of bus drivers go around tight corners, and not all bus drivers are equal.
All bus, huh?
And all, yeah. And but the other thing I'm interested in is the pedestrians who answered, who said it was dangerous. Was you said it was about 27, and yet the pedestrians who responded on your response sheet was about 2. Am I right?
2%.
2%,
Yeah.
which is how many?
Wow.
27 or 400.
Yeah, it's approximately that. There were definitely people who were car drivers who mentioned that it's unsafe to cross.
Yeah, that's
or they've noticed.
Yeah, that's the bit that concerns me always. Is that I think what you were doing is dangerous, and what I'm doing is all right. It sort of sends mixed messages. If you're not a pedestrian.
I think the question was, what was the main mode of transport? So they may be someone who drives, say, 80% of the time.
Could be.
But I suppose perhaps at the weekends they might want to the dairy.
Yeah. I mean, it is a difficult crossing for pedestrians.
Yes.
No arguments about that. If the cars are backed up, you can't get across on foot.
There'd be a number of bus users that would be pedestrians as well.
Yeah.
That's an aspect we noticed on site, trying to get across Amy's at the dairy.
Yep.
It wasn't to do with visibility that was the issue. It was actually the 2 rows of cars that were stacked, trying to find a gap.
Yeah.
We actually chose to cross mid-block further up the road.
Yes. I've got a daughter who does it every day. Well, taking the daughter to childcare.
Yeah.
And she just charges straight across.
Fearless.
Never been hit.
She's lucky.
Yes. But yeah, trying to talk sense into it is difficult. But yeah, what else do you do? Tell me how else to do it.
Yeah, difficult with roundabout pedestrians.
Yeah.
Roundabouts can be challenging too for if you're on a bike.
Absolutely.
You mentioned heavy vehicles too, so yeah, there is limitations.
It's very limited, and you haven't got a lot of room there. Even if you took the dairy out, you still have it's still in the wrong place without major realignment. So yeah,
Hands off the dairy.
Gonna have for life.
Right.
Yeah.
All good? Now I've got Mark, Debbie, Sarah, Andre, and then Luke. Mark, go ahead, please.
Yeah. One of the major contributors to that Amy's Springs and probably also Awatea is the volume of traffic coming from Selwyn now. It's just immense and causing a lot of queuing on Amy's because of it. So I'm with Andre. Look, it's a case in this one we're looking at both intersections as seen as equally dangerous. I think we've got no option than to look at the full noise. Both intersections need to be signalised, and I don't think going for a signals light version would be very wise. This one is it's just I'd love to know what your figures are for the volumes going through these intersections. I'd imagine they're pretty good.
We did have some recent counts undertaken, I think on Amy's and I think on Springs too.
Springs as well.
We can share that. I don't have them on there.
Yeah, that'd be interesting because I think Amy's has been counted just in the last couple of weeks.
Yes.
They were out for a week. So you saw 3 of them there. So I didn't actually check whether there were any down Springs. There may well have been. But the geometries there are absolutely shocking. I know a lot of people that rather than turn right at Springs off Amy's, they'll be running down Witham Street, down Branston Street. So putting them in the residential areas already because of the problems that are there. I know one of the pedestrians would have responsible to be my daughter, and she finds it incredibly difficult to get from the bus on Springs Road across to Amy's, ending up Amy's. It's an accident waiting to happen there so many times. And I was recently looking to turn left off Amy's and saw a young kid on a line scooter dash out between the lanes of traffic and got basically skittled. So he was lucky that he still bounced back up and off he went. But just couldn't see the second lane of traffic. So I'm sure young Luke here would have the similar experience. He scoots around a lot.
Wrong person.
Yeah, no,
Luke's over here.
you know, he's becoming an oldie now.
Yeah, but there's a video that I've seen from Cody as well on the dairy where the rubbish bin's just been wiped out.
I do have it if you want me to share it.
Wiped out. At least it's filled with that meat again.
Yeah, it's no bin to fill with meat now. So yeah, I'd say look, it's got to be both or none. Andre and myself and Tyler as well as the other councillor on this board to go into bat and extend your plan, do what we need to do.
Long-term plan.
Yeah.
If it's both, and
we'll see where we get to.
Are you okay now, Mark?
Yep.
Okay. Debbie, we've got you. Can you please turn on your camera?
Trying. Hang on a minute.
Well,
You can hear me though. I can't turn it off.
yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Sorry, I can't turn the camera off. Anyway, yes, I understand that you don't want to take out the right and left turns from Amy's onto Springs. I navigated that the other day, the off peak, and even then you need to be a confident driver to do so because it's so jolly busy. Just wondering with your modelling and so forth, if you want to incorporate, like I rabbit warren around there. So I'm coming out of Sue Ave, SIOUX, and turning left onto Springs to get a straight run without having to navigate the close proximities at Amy's and Springs. So come out of Sue to turn left, and then I also come out of Corsia at the lights to turn right. So there are already lights there. So from Corsia, so if you're wanting to turn right onto Springs, a good way to navigate that is to either get onto Sue and navigate round onto Corsia and or wherever you're coming from. Anyway, just to perhaps incorporate a little bit of that into your modelling. So that's how I certainly navigate around. But the problem, it is very problematic coming out of Amy's Road. And as we've mentioned for some time, that if we could extend the yellow lines a little bit on the west side of Amy's Road, a couple of houses, that gives a clear run for 2 lanes, right and left, instead of one continual running line. That could help as a quick win starter anyway. That's all from me.
All right.
When you say west, do you mean the one opposite the dairy on Amy's?
That's correct.
Yeah, which I think is technically the east, but that's okay.
Okay. Thank you, Debbie. We've got Sarah, then Andre, and then Luke.
With all the content on this slide, I think the second to last slide, I missed it. How much are we looking at? But in both intersections?
6 mil.
So we have 1.3 million in the programme budget.
Yeah.
But to do both in the options that were costed previously, and there were two options, and they also had options as well following the safety audit to add extras to there to make it safer. We're looking for both at both intersections around 6 million.
Yeah.
6. Okay. So yeah, we're missing quite a bit.
Yeah.
And just so I understand the process, so it'd be the next annual plan, like next year, that you would be looking at trying to get the funding for
That would be
I
quite-
can't say.
Yeah.
Goodness.
What does it depend on?
Well, next year's annual plan is going to be an absolute nightmare for a
Yeah.
start. But I'd say more likely next long-term plan. But it'll be funding over multiple years for a start as well.
Okay.
So yeah, impossible to say at this stage.
So is there any benefit to doing something now rather than just leaving it as is?
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to.
What are your thoughts? Because the thing is, it's not great. I don't know that we can leave it like this.
Yeah, well, I mean, so that's why we're here to
Yeah, get a
do
steer.
you want us to look into the sort of lighter touch options and come back with some costs and do some modelling.
Yeah.
So
when you talked about the lights
yeah.
and you talked about the left hand or something or other, the light left or something, what does that mean?
Sorry, I don't have it on this particular PowerPoint, but when we previously came to the board, when you come along Springs Road, it comes into two lanes, one lane to go around the corner and one lane to go on. I imagine that the lighter touch would be, I don't know because I don't model, but it would be that you would just have one lane that goes on, so there'd be a lot less changes to the actual curve.
You're talking Springs Road going up
Springs.
to Sockburn.
So if you're going Springs Road up to Sockburn, and
Right.
you'd create a sort of like a filter lane to go round into Awatea.
How would that help though?
No, sorry, that was the option that we had before. So the lighter touch, I imagine, would be that you wouldn't have all those changes. It would just be one lane. So
I just wonder what the impact would
we'd have to model that.
block the left turn lane.
No, if you take the right turn bay out,
27.
then you'll be blocked quite badly.
I'm a bit confused. You're talking about the median
Yeah,
in the middle,
Yeah.
taking that out.
but that's kind of what I'm hearing.
Is that what it is? You're taking the median out in the middle of the road?
No, we wouldn't take the median out. What I was saying is that the option that was the two options that were looked at before, one was to do one intersection, one was to do both intersections. So if we keep the what I'm hearing is that you'd like to see both intersections done.
Yeah.
So in that option, it involved quite a lot of changes to the curb radius, etc., so that you could get 2 lanes of traffic when you get to those intersections to move round corners and go straight ahead. So I haven't actually spoken to a designer of traffic of the traffic signals, but I imagine it would be just that you would just have the traffic light would control just one lane.
Either
Rather
the
than
left
having-
turn or the right turn.
Well,
So-
no, you wouldn't have the option of a left and a right turn. You would just have one lane that's going through on Springs. So at that point, you would then turn off. You wouldn't be able to split into 2 lanes just at the traffic lights to turn around.
Okay.
So you come up to the intersection either with one lane and you go either way.
It's just one lane.
Yep.
So there'd be a lot less changes.
Mhm.
But I still don't know what we can model that and see what's the least amount of work that we can do to get some signals in there. The options that we did before were the best options that we could achieve. As far as the proposal went.
Yeah. I hear what you're saying, do it once, do it right, but we risk leaving it for another 2 or 3 years with not doing a single thing. And I wonder if there's just like smaller things that we could be doing now to help something that's not going to bite into the budget too much, but it could be wishful thinking. I don't know.
You anything you
Yellow,
do.
yellow lines on Amy's Road.
But as Andrew said before, that's not going to help that much.
It's not about the crux of the issue.
Yeah,
It's the turning, right?
yeah,
It would help, but it would be minor. And,
Yeah.
and yeah, it was less than anticipated when we looked at it. I suppose it comes back to the argument about when you do it once, you do it right, or where you do it in stages and you end up potentially costing more overall.
Mm.
But the other thing too is there is the Amy's renewal, which is on budget already.
True.
And whether this will be dovetailed with the Amy's renewal, do the first portion of Amy's with this intersection change. That's potential.
Amy's renewal doesn't come quite up to this intersection.
I think it does.
It's
It's
full.
a entire length of Amy's.
Include the intersection.
It doesn't include.
Crystal and I are both on that team as well.
Yeah.
For that project, and there's been some very similar comments that were received on that too. So they are quite intrinsically linked, but also two quite different projects.
Yes, they are.
But it is the full length of Amy's Road. It comes
It is.
up to the intersection.
Yeah, up to the
Yeah.
yeah, it's where all the old dish channels.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
deep dish channel.
Yeah.
And I think what Katie was touching on too is that some of the, if there were lighter options, it's possibly the options which wouldn't involve significant curb work. Because it's the curb work which is needed to provide some additional space along with taking out parking, but also to ease some of those corners.
Yep.
I've even seen too at Amy's and Springs, some vehicles don't position themselves very well, and that's one of the reasons it stops two lanes forming as well.
Yep.
It doesn't take much for a vehicle to lock it a bit.
No,
It sort of straddle the line, even with the line.
one wheel over the line does.
Yeah. So that's another, I guess, indication about limitations of that particular approach.
The other thing that doesn't help that left turn is the fact there's a duty grade power pole right there.
And that comes back to those conversations, about undergrounding and the benefits to the whole project. Projects with if power was undergrounded, certainly frees up a few more options for us.
We do need some serious conversations with Orion around that one. The benefits of undergrounding here would be huge.
And also for safety benefits of that, not having those poles so close to the carriageway.
Yeah. Because the other thing I have seen recently too is there's a new bus depot in the old city here yard, the asphalt plant. So there's now buses that come down Amy's to turn right to go to that bus yard, which is like, really? Which piece of the traffic movements didn't you understand? But they're doing it. They've got to allow for that now.
Why can't they go down Boston Ave?
Possibly because there's a heavy traffic ban down there.
Okay, can we move on? Because we are running out of time. Are you all good with that, Sarah? I've got Andre and then Luke and then, that's it.
Thank you. This won't be a question for you, but I think it's worth exploring to find out with the appropriate planning staff. There's currently, I believe it to be a fast track application for another 500 homes within a few hundred meters of this. And the majority of them will need to be using this every day.
Yes.
And we're just about to update our DC policy. I guess what I'm keen to find out is whether any conditions of the consent can be contributing towards something like this, because it will have a direct impact.
Absolutely.
Great idea.
As for what each of those properties will be paying in development contributions towards transport, each of them might be paying 1,000 or 2,000 towards the transport network. It'd be good to understand how we can make sure that those 500 new homes, which appear very likely to be going ahead, how much money can we get out of those towards this project? I guess is something that we really need to find out. I don't know how the fast track thing works with consent conditions and what they have to pay towards. I'm not quite sure how that part works. But it'd be really good to find out because they are super, super close. And if I recall correctly, it was as much as something like 500 homes, which is massive. But something really massive to have nearby this and potentially a very convenient opportunity. Because
it's fronting onto Springs Road so that we...
precisely. Yeah, precisely. That would literally be hundreds more vehicle movements every day from that very development. Yeah, using this. So.
All right. Thank you, Andre. Luke.
Hi, team. I see that there's feedback from our regional council and our bus companies about removing the bus stops. Is that something we could do before we decide to make a decision on amending the road? Is that something we could act on sooner rather than later
To
and
the interim.
So
we can get them happy?
about the bus stop between the two intersections.
I believe so, yes.
From discussions that we had before, and I do think we put in the previous presentation,
Mhm.
is that there is intention to move that bus stop
Okay.
regardless of whether we're doing anything
Yep.
here. Timeframe wise, I don't know, but we can find out.
Okay.
Right.
And if traffic lights were installed, would they operate together or independently?
To be together.
Yeah,
They would still have to be together.
They would
support each other.
Okay, yep.
Yeah.
And are we able to install true counters to see what the volume of traffic coming from the Selwyn district is? So we have an indication of what the sort of volume is. I think some of that data is from 2021, is that right?
Yeah.
Yep.
2021.
So it is 4 years old now,
Yeah.
and obviously all those homes have gone in
Development.
and are off Awatea Road. Can we get a breakdown in price for how much we need to do for the works and how much we're doing for the road renewal? Because I know it's been lumped in together and it's been said the project's going to cost $6 million, but as I understand, a large chunk of that is also the renewal of the road. Is that right?
Well, some of it is, so it's spread across a number of different things. Some of it is that we've got data about, across Christchurch about what it's like underneath the thing. So as soon as you start digging it up, you then have to renew it to a certain standard. So apparently it's not particularly good in this area.
No.
And then we've got the old dish curb as well, dish channel. So while you're there, you need to do that. So there's quite a number of things that have come into this project budget as well.
And in order to do anything, to put lights in, do we have to renew the roading, or could we do half the job and put the lights in and then look at getting the funding to do the renewal later? And if it costs more later on down the track, then that might be fine, because that could be 5-10 years time that the road renewal happens, or is the road renewal more likely to happen than the lights? What order, if they were to be independent, would they go in?
I don't believe that the road renewal, but I'll check. But I don't believe the road renewal is on a list in high priority to do that.
Yep.
So if I'm hearing you correctly, you're saying, what if we went for a really light option of lights? Something where you could just put the lights in without any major changes to the curbs, we'd have to invest, we'll have to ask to investigate that, and therefore what would those costs be? So that in the meantime, you could look at doing the whole thing. Yeah.
There'd probably be some compromises to the efficiency of the way by not renewing the curb lines. Then we were left with the old alignment. I think looking at this plan, the curb lines, if they're amended, then do things like provide additional capacity with lane widths and ease those corners, provide space for cycles. Looks like this sort of thing. So you're left with potentially not operating as efficiently.
Then you also have the impact on the Springs Road traffic.
The corridor itself.
However, this is what we can go away and look at and come up with the sort of lightest touch proposal and a cost estimate for that.
So I think if we can get if the renewal's not currently on the plan and not likely to be done without this happening, if we can at least get something done in the meantime, if it's lights and then, in 10 years' time, we look at doing something else. I'm not going to be here in 10 years' time probably, but who knows? At least there's something done.
I think we waited too long on this one, to be honest.
That's why I don't want to push down the road. I'd rather do half the work now and get it done, or all of it if we can. Otherwise, the main safety issue, which is the lights.
What staff will be able to clarify is the cost implications and and how more of a cost you're adding if you're doing things separately and everything else. They'll be able to come back and clarify that.
That'd be great.
All right.
That's worth it.
Thank you. Thank you, Luke.
Thank you.
So Katie, do you have enough direction?
So I'll just clarify what I think I've heard today is that you don't wish us to look at roundabouts. No. You don't wish us to look at the option of banning the right turns at either of these intersections. What you'd like us to look at is re-looking at the traffic lights at both intersections but what is the simplest way we can do that with the least amount of changes and then therefore the least amount of costs?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mhm.
And that's it, nothing else.
And there's a 500 home development
Oh,
going
yes,
through,
sorry,
going
and
through
the-
consent
and the-
process at the moment on John Patterson, which will access onto Springs Road.
Are we happy not considering a roundabout at all? We don't want them to at least.
Not enough space.
It's would be narrow for a roundabout, but
To be honest, I have heard it said from a few people, why not just do roundabouts there?
Mhm.
But
there's
knowing-
not
knowing
enough
how much
space.
there is,
No.
I think we waste our time moving.
And it's not future proofing.
No.
It's kind of just a band-aid.
I think you've got it.
Got it?
You've got it head on.
Lovely.
Right.
Thank you very much for your.
Thank you.
Soon we can get
All
them
right.
started better.
Mm.
Great, thank you. And now we've got next Waikola's Skate and Scooter Park.
Thank you, team.
It could be that
Thanks,
that new
Andrew.
subdivision. Thank you. Could be that the new subdivision is required to pick up
Just
some of the tab.
conditional consent, they must build it.
But I'm just not familiar with it.
Welcome. Hello again.
Hello,
There we go.
thank you.
Good. You've got your presentation.
Yeah.
Okay.
Kia ora koutou. I'll crack straight into it. Here again about Waikola,
Cool.
basically on the back of the feedback we got from the consultation. So. Work for me.
I'm Faith, just sharing it with the Zoom.
Sorry. All good? So as we all know, the rationale as to why it's been renewed, and one of the predominant reasons is around safety, both sort of the condition of the existing asset and the safety and well-being around the SIPTED issues. And that we have been undertaking a process to work closely with the community to develop what's best for them. So since I met with you last, we have completed the concept designs by the world-renowned skate park designer. We completed, unfortunately not a hugely well participated, but nonetheless, we completed a stakeholder workshop with two local schools, and then opened it up to the wider community back in the middle of March. Then we did our formalised Korero Mai online engagement at the end of April, beginning of May. And then in the midst of that, we went to the local schools, Hornby and Hornby Primary, to do a quick drop-in session, basically with a series of tokens as to whether the tamariki and rangatahi there supported the plan. So the plan you've probably all seen, but is in the bottom of that slide there. So what we heard from the engagement feedback, so our engagement, you're probably familiar, takes sort of two parts. Well, this one took three. There's the opportunity for submitters to do an in-depth response, a quick response, and then we also went out to the local kura. So you can see from here that I guess the overarching feedback was that we'd somewhat got the design correct. The biggest bit of feedback was around the bowl, unsurprisingly around the fact that we're to a large extent removing the play space, removing the half pipe. There was a few comments around the location of the hamster wheel, which is sort of indicative, but and I think one person didn't like it. Seating and no bike and scooter track, which is a little bit lost on me because it is a scooter track, but that was the feedback. However, sort of on the flip side of that, the quick feedback received really positive support of the plans. You'll see sort of overarchingly from the one on the right hand side is the Korero Mai responses, and then the left of the quick drop-in session we did with the tamariki and rangatahi. So I wanted to come talk to you today regarding a steer on which direction we go next with this plan, based on the fact that the consultation didn't, I guess, overwhelmingly support the plan. And I guess focusing on the fact that there was a call from some for the bowl to remain. So with staff have come up with a few options moving forward that I was hoping to discuss with you. One, and I guess you could say our preferred option would be to continue with the planned full demolition of the existing assets, and build the newly designed skate park. Taking on board, there was some specific feedback about the design that we will adapt. So not discounting the rest of the feedback, but ultimately sticking with this design, tweaking some of the skate features, but fundamentally sticking with this concept. Option 2 is a slightly more complicated option and one that's not fully funded. So we remove the unrepairable and unused elements of the existing skate park. So that would be the sort of strange stairs. There's sort of a sweeping random concrete pad. The bits that weren't loved, if you will, in the consultation. So that excludes it would mean the maintaining the bowl and the half pipe. We landscape behind that. We'd have to build a retaining wall because some of those features act as a retaining elements to the skate bowl. We would have to reorientate the new design, basically 90 degrees, tucking it somewhat behind the community centre. So moving away from those really clear sight lines from the car park. The overall cost on that would be approximately having to find an additional 70,000 K. So this a high level sort of QS estimates, we would need 115,000 for the remediation, the demolition of what we don't want to keep, and the remediation of the land, including building a retaining wall. And then we would need approximately, and this is a high level indication, of around 50,000 to just make fit that skate bowl and half pipe. So that would not be completely solving all of the poor concrete issues, but it would be removing the high risk factors, the big cracks, the bits that would, the elements, the issues that would cause major injury. It would mean we have to sit comfortably with still knowing there's a medium risk there with keeping the bowl and the half pipe, because the concrete's modern skate parks have very smooth concrete that when you fall, you don't get grazes, you just sort of glide off of it. But it would solve the high risk cracks which can cause serious injury. I did include in the cover sheet a few articles about recent deaths in skate parks in Auckland, where the coroner's report have ultimately found out that it was maintenance issues in skate parks that caused these were part of the cause to these deaths. So we're taking skate park safety quite seriously. And if we go with this option, it would mean that we don't really solve any and perhaps create more SIPTED issues. We keep the bowl, which has got the poor sight lines, and we orientate the new track not in the best sight lines either. Option 3, definitely the least preferred option, would be to spend all of the renewal budget on a full resurface of the bowl and half pipe, getting that all basically a whole new concrete top up. Sounds simple, but it's very expensive. And that would use the majority of the budget, and I guess anything unspent could go back into play provisions that we are proposing we reduce. At this stage, I've sort of just got high level figures as to all of this. We didn't want to expend too much of a small budget on investigative stuff before I got a steer from you guys. So this is just high level option financial figures at this stage. So yeah, I basically have come to you to have some guidance on which direction you'd like me to pursue next before I expend more budget on going down one way, and just field any questions.
Right, thank you, Holly. Can you just clarify? I picked up on option 2, so we've got possibly a total of 235,000. How much is for option 1 and then option 3, the total?
So the overall budget will cover option 1 and option 3. Option 2 would require an additional 70,000 to be found.
How much is the overall budget?
450. Sorry, I should know that.
And then the 235 is additional to the,
No, it will be an additional 70,000.
just the
Yeah.
70.
Yeah.
Okay. And now, okay, I've got Mark.
Can you look back to the consultation?
Yeah.
Because that there looks terrible,
Mm.
showing really poor acceptance of what's being proposed. But then if you flick forward to this one, it says, oh, we've got it right.
And that's why I've come here first, because obviously a different audience filled in the quick response as opposed to the in-depth response. And quantitatively, like, we met with 400 kids and they felt we've got it right. And then the 27 responses from here felt like we've only somewhat got it right. So yeah, I guess as a start, I guess.
Who are they? Who are the 27?
They were the ones that were in the community centre and
No. This was through Kororo Mai online. They were the ones. So from our consultation team, call these the full submissions. These are people who wrote words as well as just tick box.
These aren't school children.
right.
No, they're
perhaps the skaters at Christchurch.
well,
Or are they the community?
I mean, do we know where they've come from? Are they?
Yeah.
we don't
Hornby
take
area?
demographic.
I think I know.
I think I have some opinions, but I know I have some opinions. There was a real sense of nostalgia in that
Right.
part. That's not to say that.
Are they users of the current?
I guess we don't know that. We didn't ask, do you physically skate on this space? So I don't know.
Looking at these two results, I'm thinking that you'd be wiser to go with the school children, who are the ones that will be using it.
I agree.
Whereas these could be real hard out skaters who should be using Washington Way rather than Waikola. So my pick is that you go with the locals, and the locals are saying, actually,
High
great.
school, primary school, both.
Yeah.
And you got 27 responses rather than that.
Yeah.
200 or 300 on the other one.
Yeah.
Correct.
But do more than just kids use the skate park?
Well, not if you build it like it's being proposed and it's meant for the kids.
So as I understand it from locals, I don't know bugger all about skate parks, but as I understand it from locals around Knightstream, for example, I'm told that kids, some older, they would bus all the way from other parts of Christchurch to go to that skate park because it's got the big bowl of some description, right? And I would presume you'd have, people who like skate parks for that type of thing that they can use, who will have taken the time to submit on something like that. So I suspect it would.
Core rather than...
Yes, I suspect there's some of those who will bus all the way there because it's got the better skate facility. So presumably that's sort of what we're looking at here.
Yeah.
And
Whereas
presumably,
to me, we should be targeting at the beginner, intermediate, and the local kids who will use it because they've got something new and flash, and then they'll start busing to the other side of town to use Washington Way. So you create.
And it doesn't solve the SIPTED issues by leaving.
No.
correct. That's
Which
what
is my
concern.
biggest concern.
Waikola Park's really important. We get that.
It is.
Yeah.
so yeah, I mean, it's being designed not for skating in Christchurch, it's being designed for locals, right? Is that fair to say?
And
and
very
we-
much that beginner to intermediate,
Yeah.
which the bowl is probably intermediate and up.
So that's another point. So what we find in some of these places is that a lot, the older, more experienced will come and in some ways sort of push the younger, more beginners out of the way, and then they feel a bit more intimidated.
And
So-
they're perhaps the ones that create septic issue by bullying the locals off.
that's so yeah. I think you're spot on, and I'm a big fan of hamster. I'm very familiar with hamster wheels, less familiar with skate parks.
Right.
In which case I'm tempted to say, look, we've got it right. Let's box on, and option one it is.
I agree.
Right, thank you, Mark. Luke, and then Andre.
I've actually done mine now. Thank you.
You jumped
I jumped in.
Yeah,
Yeah.
well done.
So I'm guessing that's answered part of my first question, which is the demographic of people that have consulted, which obviously we don't have. Is that something we would normally ask, or we didn't in this
I think we
case?
only ask that in like citywide consultations.
Okay.
And it's perhaps some feedback I could give to our consultation team because I wanted that information and
Mhm.
it wasn't available. Yeah.
Is
It'd
there,
be good to know where they've come from.
yeah, and where they've come from, because like, yeah, you're looking at that,
We
and
may have a bit more detail on.
That would be really interesting to hear.
because I guess the thing is, if locals have gone out of their time to put their feedback through an extended process, I guess we should be listening to them. Is there a way that there could be a half bowl or a smaller bowl, not within the budget, or?
So that, to build that bowl from scratch that was up to new standards
Yep.
would be more than the budget we have for just the renewal.
At that size, even if you halved it, I don't know if you can halve it.
Yeah, and you couldn't, there's a reason we've gone to expert designers.
Yep.
No, you can't make a tiny little bowl.
Okay. And the comment about the half pipe, it looks like, I guess there's not one, but there's plenty of room. There's plenty of room for
There's,
sort of stuff, isn't
there
there?
is like a mini half pipe.
Yeah.
If you go, the sort of cross section of the fourth is
At the one at the top.
Just a wheel.
I don't have a pointer. This part here acts as like a mini half pipe.
Okay,
But
exactly.
I guess like just for like these are only 900 high. Like it is a low level.
Mhm.
Like it's a very low budget for a skate park.
It's meant for kids
It's
to get
meant
started on.
for
Yep.
beginners to intermediates, and I guess that's the big take home that people I guess felt like we were taking away from the
Cool.
hardcore, the
So it's always
challenge.
being designed for beginners, is that?
No,
Beginners to
intent?
intermediate, and that was the brief sort of I was met with at the
Is that
beginning.
what the original plan was for it, or?
that would be more intermediate, go
Okay.
advanced,
Mhm.
just with the bowl.
Oh, the existing one it used to have this crazy
Yes, used to have a
They had a vertical.
vert
Half
ramp,
ramp,
no,
whatever.
vert-
No, no.
no, full vert ramp.
full wet ramp.
And the kids used to bring it down because they
Mm.
couldn't use it.
Yep.
So they used to send it away.
Which is one of the things I said to Yanni, wanting.
So,
Helen, would you like to come through the?
Sorry.
No,
That's helpful, thank you.
I know what you mean. I grew up in Tauranga and we had this big wooden
Yeah.
thing, and although no one burnt it down.
They get burnt down in other parts of the country too.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah,
we're not proposing a vert ramp. The
No.
state
No,
community
no.
would like one somewhere. This is definitely not.
no, this is not really the area for it.
Yeah.
No, that's all my questions. Thank you.
All right, then I've got Sarah.
I guess kind of a question, but also like the goal with Waikola, from my understanding of it, what's been going on there, and it's sort of, and with the tree planting plan, all the consultation around it is really about trying to activate it, isn't it? The local community, getting the families engaged, and I think that this is a really good way of doing that. And
What we did hear, sorry to interrupt you,
yeah.
what we did hear from particularly the older rangatahi at that workshop was that lots of them actually didn't skate, but they felt like it would be a nice place to hang out.
yes,
And that, hence lots of seating, lots of shade, lots of sort of, places to just be. And
Yes.
that was what lots of people wanted. They didn't necessarily
Totally.
want.
and they loved the colour.
Yeah, they
Yeah.
love the colour.
They
Yeah.
loved the colour,
Oh, so the-
loved the vibrancy.
The pink
Yeah.
is actually going to be there?
Yeah.
Okay.
They really liked that.
Well,
Nobody-
contrast.
And that,
Only
had
good
no
positive
gender.
comments about the pink.
Yeah.
The feedback that the younger children said they wanted to do some of the artwork along the pathway,
Mhm.
and that will
Cool.
facilitate
Cool.
with a sort of Hornby. We might run a competition or something.
yeah.
So even when we consider all of the feedback, add everything together, it's still overwhelming that we got things right,
Yes.
which is obviously a little bit more difficult to do when you do a brief session as opposed to extended.
In fact, we're only
Online.
talking about 10 people who actually disagree.
Yeah,
Mm.
I guess it just, had you seen it on a board
Yeah.
report, you might
Out of
see 50%
what,
of
100%?
detailed submitters, 56 didn't.
and
So
I've
that-
heard from other people who didn't participate in the engagement. And they're really excited about it.
Yeah,
going
yeah.
ahead,
And we-
And they were adults who were skaters
we've
with kids. who
Got
were
the target audience.
And we did meet with Autotahi Skate Collective, who I guess attempt to navigate that overarching Christchurch-wide plan,
Mm.
and they had positive things to say.
Okay, great.
So,
involved in the design too, so.
yeah.
And what's the demographic of that group? Are they mainly older? or-
Older.
Okay, cool.
So it
So,
would be cool to get that sort of group involved in
Mhm.
activating this,
yeah, absolutely.
teaching the kids how to do
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
In terms of timelines, once you've given you the steer, where do we go from here?
So we're hoping for construction, beginning of next calendar year. We need to get
Approval by the board first.
approved, sorry, yeah.
Yeah.
Approve, so this will come,
Retrospective.
to.
Let's do the whole.
Can't get approval. I am due to be here in August for the decision meeting.
Nice.
Yes.
Exciting.
Yeah.
And then, should all things going well, be able to construct early next year.
So, as in taking out what's currently there from the beginning of the.
We may, this best case scenario, would be able to start demolition this side of Christmas, May.
Awesome. Well done. That was good.
I've got one last question from Andre.
Is it a proper hamster wheel that you'll injure yourself on if
Yeah.
you go too fast? No, they haven't changed the rules and hamster wheels are going to be
Slow them down.
One guy, I think he's in Tauranga, this gentleman who has been making them his whole life.
Yeah.
His business. I mean, there's probably slight tweaks, but he's the same guy who's made probably New Zealand wide hamster wheels.
Yeah.
I guess just to flag the hamster wheel, whilst we're on that subject, we chose it because there's only one in Christchurch and it's in Sumner, so it's the polar.
Yeah.
And all the school kids I go and speak to, they always want hamster wheels.
Yeah.
We chose this spot because, relatively speaking, it's quite far from neighbours, and they've already got the noise of the basketball court and the skate, so adding an extra banging of a hamster wheel. We've got the space, we're taking away, from a public perception, a playground, so we wanted to put something in that was a bit of a wow feature, but with limited budget, so it's just one thing. It'll probably be better connected than that. That looks like it's sort of, the skate people put that in, so we'll tweak where that lands. But yeah, my only concern with the hamster wheel is that they just sort of create a beautiful space for graffiti.
I was just about to ask what material they use on the inside, so if it's
Wood.
graffiti to.
So you can sand it off.
Yeah, and I think it might be something we have to accept.
Yeah, like is there like something you can
Yeah, I mean, you can
coat
put
over
graffiti
it?
tape on it.
Be able
Yeah.
to put a mural or something.
Let's stick a
Yeah.
street out on
True.
it.
Yeah,
Yeah.
we
Kids do.
hope to front foot that and paint and cover as much of it as possible, but it might just be something I guess from my perspective, it's better if it's all centered around one hamster wheel than in the concrete, because but yeah. I did look at installing those spray cans that are in the city there as like a specialist deterrent,
come and
but
do it,
they're
yeah.
very wide and they act as a bit of a hiding thing.
The graffiti wall at Michael.
And there is a graffiti wall, yeah.
Oh, cool.
That people can just.
Around the back of the.
At any time.
Yeah.
That's very smart. I'd say you're all over it, but
Yeah.
I'd say you're all over it.
Cool. Well done.
Cool. All right, I think
Hang on.
you're
I just have
Andre, so apparently, Andre wasn't the last question.
Oh, I'm going to vote against any.
We've got Hank and then Luke and then Sarah.
Oh, you got in there.
Go ahead.
Yeah, I was just going to say, when you started, you said you had some doubts because of feedback, and when you look at the numbers of the feedback, I reckon they're brilliant.
Oh, good.
I
guess
really
it
do.
depends which way what you land on. I personally think we need to give children more of a voice, and I think
Absolutely.
it shows
But
them.
I think if you can get less than 10% of people against it, you're onto a winner in my books.
Yeah, I don't know
And
whether
you've got about 5% of people against it.
a recent
All up.
newspaper article where Selwyn Council was slammed for taking children's voices on board, and I think this
Yes.
is the opposite.
I'm going to be using it for the next 10 years.
Yeah, all the children. Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, I guess kids aren't jumping onto ccc.net as often as maybe.
Maybe they should.
Yeah.
With this program.
Yeah.
Right.
No, I
Um,
went to outdoors. Yeah.
Is there an option potentially to add bike stands or
Yeah.
a dedicated scooter drop-off point?
That's sort of low cost, small scale
Mhm.
things will be included. And on one thing that we are hoping to be able to afford is a really cool, I guess, Instagrammable sign where we're gonna ask the community to donate old skate decks and build the etiquette sign out of the skate decks. And then if we can afford it, we're going to try and build a sign that welcomes you to the park with a skateboard like this, so that you can actually stand on it.
Cool.
And have like your photo. So that
Cool.
basically activating this space and making it feel cool.
Yeah.
I've actually got an old skateboard I can donate if you put a Hornets logo on.
we're going to give
That's
away
awesome.
maybe some like hot pools vouchers for every skateboard donated to make this.
Oh,
Cool.
To just get buy-in.
Yeah.
yeah.
All right, I'll take the last question for Sarah and then we'll.
Yep, I'm done.
So all going well, if it starts, construction starts the beginning of next year, how long approximately?
10 weeks.
Oh, maybe by Hello Hornby.
That doesn't include demolition, sorry, and that.
Oh, yeah, true.
That is the unknown kettle of can of worms.
If there's any way to have a ribbon cutting of this at home.
Hello Hornby, yeah, but
That'd be-
March,
Right.
but beginning of March, no, it's the
pressure.
end of March,
No pressure, just
No, kind of middle.
mid.
Yeah.
Okay, I'll bear that in mind as best as possible.
it'll be that'd really icing on the cake. really.
You want to have
Yeah,
another
I do.
event for something like this though, right?
Yeah, that's true. A dedicated event for it.
Worthy of its own event.
Yeah,
Mm.
like we did with my.
Yeah, and I'm hoping to.
Shame
Yeah.
that construction site is very-
Right, Holly, do you have enough guidance from the board
Yeah.
on
Awesome.
what?
Good
Yeah,
job.
Thank you.
All right,
Well done.
okay, thank you.
But you'd be able to be on your skateboard in the hamster wheel and have someone else run.
I'm gonna come watch you do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll bring my skateboard.
Yeah.
Info session, we are closed. Thank you. And
Those who haven't replied to the youth development application.
We're still on live stream.
The other one's just.